Hey there everyone. Rumble just released 9 new skill runes into the game, 3 for each class, and I thought I'd do a preview showcasing each one and trying to explain what's going on with them and give my own opinions on them. I'm going to go through in order, Wizard, Archer, and then Knight, and in each one I'm going to do the skill runes in order of how good I think they are, so finishing on the best one. There's some interesting ones, and I just want to say, first off, as skill runes come out, some are really good, some are not so good, and to be honest, we just have to kind of take it for what it is. So some of them really, they're worth missing almost completely, but some of them just have like a unique use, with very niche use. I mean, which you'd use it in a particular situation, but otherwise not. So yeah, don't expect them all to be amazing. I'm gonna suggest probably just one really on each class, and the other two aren't so good. But anyway, moving on from that, let's start with the Wizard one. So the first one I'm going to look at is Empowered Frostdrake. It's pretty much just bringing out this old Frostdrake rune, but it isn't so powerful. I really don't like it, but Frostdrake hasn't been around for ages, and many people have wanted it. It's got a few uses. One of them is farming, because it drops down an icicle, and so you can use it to, and you can use it around corners and stuff, so you can use it to take down barrels and stuff at the side. And also it's got use in PvP with the slow effect, which the base skill doesn't have. And then it's got the amazing use where if you use Master of Ice with it, it increases the damage massively. You can see this in my skill runes guide. This is the base skill. So it does in total, ignore the exact numbers, but it does about, say, 15 million or whatever. And then when you get elemental bonus, this is just with 100%, it doubles the damage. The actual damage it adds on is almost nothing because it doesn't actually crit. But you can see if you had 200% bonus from Master of Ice, it's going to be hitting tons. So that's a brilliant use for it, and that's why I think most people want it. So this is basically giving Frostdrake, but without that use. So it's got the use of farming, and it's got the use in PvP with the slow, but without that use, because the damage that's added is 3,807 plus 20% frost damage. That 20% is pet damage, so it's not so easy to work out how good it is. However, the base skill I've worked out does roughly 300% pet damage, so adding 20% on that is not very much at all. If you look here, just at the base skill here, 15.7 goes to 16.8. That's if you have the skill rune maxed, and then as you increase your water damage, it increases it a little bit, but really it's not going to be doing tons of damage the same way Frostdrake does by increasing your water. However, it does still have the slow effect and also the use in farming. So really, this is there for the people who didn't have the original Frostdrake rune and they want to have the slow effect in PvP, but without making this skill overpowered or whatever. So that's how it works, and I was going to show to prove the damage, but yeah, just trust me on it. That's how it works. That's how the damage is going to be. It's just nothing that special. So moving on to the next one I was going to look at, Radiant Light. So Radiant Light, I actually got this slightly wrong on the forum. I said it was the same damage output as Shadowburn. It's actually a little bit more. I thought Shadowburn had plus 60% shadow, but it's actually 40%. So this essentially does about, alright, sorry, what I'm thinking in my head, that 10,988 plus 40% on Shadowburn equals about plus 80%. So that means you're doing, the base score does 105%, and then you're doing plus 80% shadow. Now, Radiant Light does the 105% base damage, plus then you've got the 21% plus what would be 20%, and then you've got another 20% on top of that. Is that right? Yes. No. Oh, I'm confusing myself. Sorry, no. Okay. Forget what I said. That 10,988, that's 40%, sorry. So, yes. I think I got that all right. Okay, so yeah, 80% shadow, but here, that 21% becomes 60%, and then when you add the extra bit, which is the pulse, which also does a little AoE, that's another 40%. So basically, Shadowburn is the base 105% plus 80% shadow. Radiant Light is the base 105% plus about 100% light. So it's about 20% more, which when you look at the numbers when they come out, comes out as a bit higher. So you can see here 8.5 million, it's 9.6 million. And then it also, because there's more elemental damage, when you get your elemental bonus up, the difference is slightly larger. So in that sense, it's kind of good, because this skill's all about damage, and so you will be dealing more damage. However, it's also doing... Oh no, it says stunning. It says stun here. It says fear on the... That is odd. Oh, it's been changed to stun. Ah, okay, because I complained on the forum that it was fear, not stun, and now suddenly it's become stun. Well, thank you, Rumble, if you listen to me. But yeah, okay, so it does a stun effect, and yeah, in that case, all right. So you haven't got that as a downside. In that case, it's pretty much just better than Shadowbend. Does more damage, and it's light element instead of shadow. So it depends more so what bonus you have in your character. For example, if you've got the Shadow Curie loads, then your Shadowburn would be powerful. However, if you've got light or just haven't got much of either, then Radiant Light is slightly more powerful. So yes, it pretty much doubles the damage output of this skill, which is good, considering it's a damage skill. However, the one downside for me is this Water Beam. If you look at Water Beam here, it starts off, it only does 4.8 million, which is literally the base damage of the skill, but turned into water. And because of Master of Ice, where you can get 200%, this actually makes this closer to 15 million. It makes it the same as Radiant Light if you have 100% light. Now, because 100% light is actually really hard to get, and 200% water is pretty much, like, you can get it after you've been in the end game for a bit. You just need to max Master of Ice, which is one of the best skills to max anyway. You're going to be hitting the same damage with Water Beam. Water Beam doesn't have the stun, but considering how easy it is to get Water Beam more powerful than Radiant Light, that to me puts this skill rune down a little bit. It's only good, but for a skill which is pretty much just for damaging, I prefer to use Water Beam. So I wouldn't really look at getting up any Arcane Beam skill rune unless it's seriously good in some way. And if you look at the AoE on the shockwave thing, you can see it's not huge. It's a kind of small area. I think it's the same as an arcane ball at sort of base level. So it's your standard kind of small hitting thing. Anyway, so that's that skill rune, which is cool but not amazing. And then we've got Empowered Flame Armor, which is very, very awesome. I love this. I think I actually gave it a rating 10 out of 10 in my skill runes guide here. Now, it's basically just a revamped version of Flame Armor. Flame Armor hits 2,440, which is very small, and that doesn't crit, so it's tiny. It's really just for farming. Doesn't have any use outside of farming. And you need to level it up quite a bit before it does enough damage. You can help if you have some fire stat, but yeah, it's a really, really good farming rune. One of the best that's there, but that is its only use. So this new one here, the damage on it crits, which makes it do insane amount of damage. You're looking at around about 20% of a basic attack dealt twice per second. I wrote that down here if you want to just work it out and reference it. But yeah, because of that static damage is. So you're doing about 40% of basic attack to all enemies around you each second, which is like Guardian Light at maximum. Sorry, no, it's not. It's not like Guardian Light, but it's a similar thing. It's a defensive skill, but then turned into an offensive thing. So if you stand near to them, then you're going to be damaging them. So you can see here, this is actually dealing half damage because they're water enemies. But yeah, basically it deals some quite serious damage, and you can use the skill and then switch out and use something else, run around, and then you can just sort of top it up when it comes off. You can have it on almost constantly, and really I think this is an awesome buff to the skill. Yeah, I'll definitely be using it as the one skill rune. So this doesn't need leveling for farming at all, which is brilliant difference to Flame Armor. you won't need any fire jewels on your farming gear to use it, which is very useful for me. And then in PvP, this might even have some use because fire is kind of an overpowered elemental stat. And if you look at a lot of the other skills, there are ridiculously powerful fire skills. So many people have got their fire stat up quite high, as well as there was the fire curio recently. So if you're like me and have over 100% fire damage, I have roughly 150%. So this would be doing, rather than 40% of a basic attack per second, it will be dealing literally a basic attack per second to everything around me, which will be very awesome in PvE and even more awesome in PvP, because if I use both Empowered Flame Armor and Guardian Light, I'm going to actually be like killing people by being around them, which is very good for defending against knights and otherwise extremely useful. So that's the best skill rune for the wizard class, I think. I'm going to move on to the archer now. So the first skill rune for archer we're going to look at is Divine Companion. Now this is the second skill rune to come to this class, this skill, and the first one is Stone Bear. It came out over a year ago. It turns the falcon into a bear that can be attacked, and so the idea was to turn it into something that could tank. However, the health, for whatever reason, they set it as a set amount. So as stats inflated, it dies almost instantly now. There's just literally no point to it. So really, this skill had absolutely no skill rune for it until Divine Companion. So, you know, something's better than nothing. However, this is almost nothing. I don't know what they were doing with it. It's really so bad. So the 2030, that doesn't crit. If you've seen my recent pet skills video, many of the skill runes, I think there might be an exception now, but pretty much all the skill runes for pet skills, the damage on it doesn't crit, the damage added on. So yeah, that 2030 just doesn't do anything. The 20%, that is hard to kind of judge how powerful it is. However, it's pet damage, and if you look at the skill itself, it's 190%. So that 20% is only actually adding about like 10% of the total damage on top. I did run the numbers in my skill runes guide. I haven't done the archer section properly, but I did the skills which the skill runes have just come out for. I did the damage in at least. So if you look here, this is the no rune. It's hitting about that much each time. Divine Companion a tiny bit more. And as you increase your light damage, your light stat, it really doesn't go up by much. Stone Bear there looks like it gets to lots. It does because it's all nature damage, but because it dies like this, that's not going to be dealt. This is per attack, by the way, if you hadn't guessed. So yeah, going back to this, it just really doesn't add much damage at all. And then the healing is 2030, and that's literally 2030 every roughly 2 seconds when it attacks. So if enemies are around, you heal by what would be roughly 1% of your health every 2 seconds, which is atrocious. Like nothing at all. If you look at lifesteal's way better. So really the only true benefit of this is the stats that I added on, the damage, crit rating, and armor. Yeah, I would give this a miss unless literally you want those stats, or you've done everything else. Unfortunately, that's just a bad skill rune. Next one is Empowered Shadow Arrow. Now, this skill primarily is for slowing enemies, which, because the base damage is 131%, that isn't very viable in PvE. In PvP, it can be used to slow them, and in fact, there's a skill rune on it, which is Static Field, which many people like to use in PvP because it also roots them. In PvE, what it does, I'll show you. The actual damage is only in a small area, but then it creates this thing on the ground which slows and roots enemies, and yeah, it's really useful for holding enemies off. You can see they basically get stuck. Now the root, I think it kind of activates for a second, and then there's a break, and then it activates for a second. That's how it works in PvP at least. So yeah, it's not a constant root, but there's a slow on top. So yeah, the two work really well together at holding people back. So that kind of amplifies what this skill is used for. However, what Empowered Shadow Arrow does is quite literally double the damage output. They've done this for quite a few other skills, just literally slapped on a ton of damage to make it viable. And yeah, this is probably one of my favourites of the archer skills. You've got no, not this one, concussive arrow, which does the stun effect. That's cool. And then this is the slow one. So yeah, before this, it was just literally using it for the slow. But now what they've done is they've added on enough damage onto it that it makes it damage and slow, which is awesome for PvP because slow is really good in there. And now suddenly we've got one which hits hard. So looking at the damage here, I messed up. I'm going to have to alter this because for these ones I forgot that the base damage was actually elemental too. So yeah, look at this here, and then this 100%. This should be double what that actually is. So yeah, you're doing about for comparison 1.5 million here with the base skill, and that's what you're doing with the other ones. And then when you get higher elemental damage, you can do sort of about 3 million. Now, Empowered Shadow Arrow at the base skill, so with it max level but no elemental damage, you do 3.2 million. So that's like I said, double the base, and double what it would do without any skill rune. And then it would obviously increase to quite a nice amount if you have high shadow bonus. So yeah, just hold on 1 second. You can see there my battery was about to run out. So yeah, it just slaps on a ton of damage, and I do think this is probably the best skill rune on this skill. And for people who like using this in PvP for the slow effect, this is a nice skill rune to go for. Not incredibly good, but one of those kind of handy mediocre skill runes that you can go for if you've done the better ones. So now we're going to look at, oh sorry, actually I'm just going to show the area of effect on that. So it's not a huge area of effect, it's just like a small little area you hit. There's no animation for it that I can tell, but yeah, it's like Wizard's Arcane Ball without a skill rune, which is, you can hit a group of enemies, but yeah, they've got to be grouped like this. Literally that kind of distance is the full distance, and you hit the one in the middle. So yeah, moving on to the third one, we've got Fire Trap here, Empowered Fire Trap. Now, I really like this one, mainly because I really like fire skills, because a lot of them are overpowered, and a lot of people have higher fire damage. But anyway, the first one here, the first skill rune was Fire Trap. That damage doesn't crit, so even though it hits multiple times, it's almost nothing. So that was a kind of pointless skill rune. Water Illusion then came out, which is a lot more interesting. When it dies or expires, it explodes and heals you by roughly 25 to 30% of your health. That's only if you're stood fairly nearby, but it's quite a nice little heal there, as well as slowing the enemies, which, if you think about it, slowing the enemies is very good for PvE, because you're putting this down to keep the enemies away. And so one of the problems with archers is when it dies too fast, then you've got to try and you've got to panic as you're waiting for it to come off cooldown. And if the enemies are slowed so they can't come to you as quickly, then you can put down another one a lot more easily. The only things really immune to slow are bosses, so and they have a hard time killing a decoy. So the two balance out, and it works out as a really nice PvE skill. In PvP, not quite so good, but again, still kind of helpful. So this one is kind of different. Basically, they just slapped on a ton of damage. Now, I know a lot of people will look at that 7% and just think, oh, it does hardly anything. What's the point in it? Well, that's not the main source of the damage. The 5,412 is, that crits. So overall, it works out as about 30% fire damage it's adding on. Which, if you think about it, that's going to hit 7 times. So roughly overall, it's going to hit 200%. Which, yeah, isn't huge, but it's all fire. So if you have a high fire stat, that's going to hit really hard. I think I actually have 200% fire. Oh no, that's on my wizard. So yeah, I haven't got any fire bonus. The skills here, they're going to be doing half damage roughly because they're resistant to fire. But yeah, this is a really, really nice buff to decoy because you're going to be using it anyway. And so to have damage boosted off it when it dies, hits 7 times. You can see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, that's a fairly nice damage boost. If you think you've got, say you have like 100% fire, which a lot of people do because of the fire curio and other jewels which they picked up, yeah, that's doing like 4 basic attacks worth of damage to anything that's around your decoy when it explodes. Yeah, it's like the Guardian Light skill rune for Protection Bubble, which the Protection Bubble was literally just support or just defense, no damage from it at all. And then they brought out Guardian Light, which just slaps on a ton of damage to any enemies around you when you have it on. Similarly, like, well, you're going to be using Protection Bubble anyway because it's awesome. So yeah, similarly, you got that here. And yeah, so in fact, it's double as powerful as Guardian Light in comparison. So yeah, just looking at the damage, as to prove it, yeah, so it will do about 1.5 million, or if you have 100% fire, 3 million, and that's area of effect to anything around it when it explodes. So yeah, that's my favourite Archer skill rune. You may have a different opinion on it, but yeah, I really like the look of this one. And yeah, I'm going to move on to the Knight skill runes now. Before I actually talk about any of the Knight skill runes, I'd like to say I think Knights really came out worst out of these 3 skill runes. Unfortunately, they don't have any massively standout one. However, there is one I think that is better than the others. So yeah, we're going to start with Consecration. The previous skill runes, Shadow Crash really is the good one here. It adds on a ton of damage. The base damage is 114%, so when it adds on 105% Shadow plus that 15,000, that's roughly, I call it 150% or a bit more Shadow damage. So yeah, it over doubles the power of the skill, and it also adds a knockback, which will knock back the enemies further away from you, and then they're stunned there for 3 seconds before they can attack you again. So that was a really nice skill rune. And then Consecration came out, and the damage is just not there at all. It's yeah, worse all round. Really, not much for damage increase to the skill. Actually, okay. It's about adding 3/4 again on of the damage as light. Kind of nice. The heal 7%. That's just small. I don't know why they would bother adding a 7% heal. And then the ground becomes consecrated, giving 25% move speed bonus when activated. Maybe they can like. I guess this would be a farming skill rune because people use Rumble in farming. But yeah, it's not like a huge thing. It's not like a huge area. But yeah, so I guess in some ways this is for farming. But probably what they are thinking this is for PvE. So you use Rumble to stun them, and then you run away. I would say that's probably the best use of Rumble in PvE. Is for stunning the enemy so you can get away. So a little move speed boost on it is nice. But yeah, just because of that damage, like compared to Shadow Crash, Consecration is worse. I can't say it's better. And yeah, sorry, just to show the damage actually, this is on my skill runes guide, and we've got 2 million for Shadow Crash with no bonus, and 1.5 for Consecration. So you can see it's about 3/4 of the damage. And yeah, still compared to the base skill, it's a nice buff, but yeah, only for dealing with shadow enemies really. And as you increase your bonus, because it's easier to get shadow than light as well. You probably have more shadow here. Anyway, the next skill I'm going to look at is the Poison Hurl. Now I actually like Hurl as a skill. It's really cool. It basically hits everything around where you attack it. It looks very different, and like it would only hit off a certain number of targets. But actually, if I group the enemies together, I'm going to talk about stuff while I'm grouping them together. It will actually hit everything that's within range of the target you choose to hit. It hits them all instantly as well, even though the shield kind of flies around. So yeah, I'm going to group all these enemies together. And my reason why I put this second rather than first is because the Frozen Shield is just so much more powerful. Because like wizards, you have Lord of Winter that will increase it by 200%, the water damage. Frozen Hurl's so much more powerful. Yeah, so I'm going to show it here. Just going to use it here. As you can see, it hits pretty much everything. If you use it on the right target. There, they're all grouped up now. Bang! They all get hit at once. You see, and yeah, does the damage over time. Overall, the damage output compared to Frozen Shield is a little bit higher, just a tiny bit higher. But because you can have 200% water on this, it's likely that your Frozen Shield will be a lot more powerful when you have Lord of Winter active. So yeah, more of a kind of like a a choice between the two depending on what kind of enemies you're facing in PvE. But for PvP, you definitely want the Frozen Shield. It's also got that slow effect, which is nice, whereas Empowered Poison Hurl doesn't. Now I've got 1 minute before, and I don't want to have to record another video, so I'm just going to very quickly talk about Empowered Meteor Dash. Basically, the previous ones, some of them just changed the damage type to element, so they're kind of useful for when you're taking on different PvE enemies. Empowered Meteor Dash, what it does is it adds the base skill is 200% damage, and then this will add 100% fire on that, and then add another 100% in a damage over time in a little pool. Now, what's annoying about that is the pool is so small. I will show you here. It's that little area there, the little bright area. So really, you can only reliably hit that on bosses, which is a massive pain. However, for a boss takedown thing, it's kind of good. You can run away from a boss, charge into them, and then have the pool there. And if you look at the damage output here, it is considerably more. So that's why I have it rated the top out of these three. But yeah, none of them stand out as amazing. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching.